It is Monday, October 31st, 2017. Happy Halloween. I'm Ashton Ellett, here with Chairman Billy Lovett, here in Sandy Springs, Georgia, for another installment of the Two-Party Georgia Oral History Program, sponsored by the Richard B. Russell Library at the University of Georgia. Thank you very much, Mr. Lovett, for being with us today.
Certainly, Ashton. Thank you.
Certainly do appreciate it. Just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, your background, things like that?
Well, probably as it relates to the political environment, my grandfather was in the State House and Senate for over 20 years, and as a child, he would take me around to political rallies, and I got to meet Richard Russell many times, Carl Vinson, Herman Talmadge, and so it was very interesting growing up, meeting all these people, very important people. At the time, I didn't know how important they were, but it was great. So that was some upbringing, and never had any idea I wanted to get into public office, though. But I understood the calling, understood why a lot of people wanted to do it. They wanted to improve their communities. Later in life, I ran for chairman of the county commission, was elected, and we were able to get voting machines in. We didn't have voting machines at the time. Focus on economic development, build industrial parks, and do that sort of thing. So I got a real close look at how to help the community.
What are your earliest memories of politics in Georgia? Did you come from a political family or a political background?
Well, my grandfather, who was in the State House and Senate for over 20 years, I'd go to political rallies with him, and I'd go door to door handing out flyers and helping him campaign. So, and meeting some of the most important state senators, House members, U.S. Congress members, U.S. senators. It was quite an experience as a young child.
And I'm assuming he was a Democrat.
He was a Democrat.
Did you know many Republicans down in Lawrence County?
Not a one.
something of a rarity, south of the Nat line. So you were saying that you were active in the Lawrence County Commission, Chamber of Commerce, things like that. This would have been 1970s?
1970s.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of the beginning of what historians and people call the Sun Belt boom of trying to recruit business and development. Also, a little later than this, the so-called Two Georgias controversy. Can you tell me about the disparity economically, socially, politically that existed in rural places like Lawrence County as opposed to your more dynamic, growth-oriented metropolitan counties, Atlanta in particular?
Well, we weren't as bad off as some. I can show you a lot of counties that were hurting then and are hurting worse today. Fortunately, Lawrence County had leadership on the Chamber of Commerce. We had leadership in the House and in the Senate. And so I-16 was a big boom. We started industrial development parks, which a lot of counties, if you're not on a major transportation thoroughfare,
right,
can't do. So that enabled us to logistics to be able to have companies that are coming from the Port of Savannah and put in distribution centers. So that's where we succeeded, because of leadership.
So was your location with on those major transportation thoroughfares? Was transportation one of the major pitches that you and the Chamber of Commerce and the County Commission would make to potential employers or industrial recruits?
It's true. Industrial revenue bonds, transportation, we want your industry, we're here to help in any way possible. And then with that, you have the Chamber of Commerce, me, other people, you have to go out and meet with folks at conferences and other places and actually go try to do recruiting, not depend on just the state economic development to do it for you.
So I know every pitch is tailored to a potential recruit, but what was sort of the usual package that you tried to pitch? Why you would locate in, say, a Dublin or Lawrence County?
It's transportation. It's a workforce. So you have to have skilled workers. We have a very robust workforce at a period of time when the textile industry was declining. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were looking for jobs, willing to be trained, and then again you have training initiatives by the state and others to be able to train these workers. So it's as you know, it's a combination. It's low taxes. It's a combination.
So we're about 30 years or so on from when Professor Floyd was talking about the two Georgias problem with the disparity in rural Georgia and then urban and metropolitan Georgia. Arguably, the problem's only gotten worse since 1985. What can be done to mitigate or try to reverse the decline, so-called, of places, rural Georgia, middle Georgia, South Georgia especially?
I'm not sure, depending on locations, that a whole lot can be done. I mean, it's a fact of life. The transportation corridors are extremely important, and if you're located in the far southeast or southwest or northeast or northwest, and you don't have access to good transportation, you can offer economic development incentives and beyond, and you can train local workforce, and you can try your best. But we have 159 counties, and not all of them are going to be economic powerhouses. That's just the way it is.
I was reading about Kill Townsend the other day, and he was always in the legislature sponsoring bills to consolidate the number of counties in Georgia to make it a more manageable. Is that something that, politically speaking, is a pipe dream?
Yes, pipe dream.
But is it something that would help, or is it just the sheer geographic expanse of Georgia?
Georgia's a big state. It's a big state. So if you consolidate them, I don't think it's going to have that much of a, and practically it's not even worth talking about because it's not going to happen.
Right. Too many folks love their high school football team, or something like that.
Or something.
So, what made you want to make the jump from Lawrence County Commission to the Public Service Commission in 77, 78?
It was interesting because, again, I had no idea that I'd ever run for statewide office. In the middle of the wintertime, we had this African-American family come in and said, Georgia Power has cut off our electricity and we're freezing to death. So the county, just like in the days of old, the county has a process where you can come in and appeal to the county directly to the commission for funds, emergency funds, something that's a real emergency and there's not some other agency that can take care of it. So they made an appeal, and so we got the power cut back on, which caused me to think, wait a minute, there's got to be some other better process than just cut somebody off in the middle of wintertime and let them freeze to death. So I called the Public Service Commission to just get educated. They never called me back. So I called the chairman's office. They didn't call me back. So then I started my inquiry of researching the Public Service Commission and how out of touch they are with the public. And the public doesn't understand that they've got the Public Service Commission that's supposed to protect them and represent them. They're elected officials. So the more I dug into it, I did a lot of research, the more I was convinced that the Public Service Commission was not there to serve the public, but to serve the utilities. And that's just a fact of the matter. And that's been true, it's been proven. And so I ran, and the public supported me, and they said, we want somebody that's an outsider. We don't want a career politician. We want somebody that is going to represent us, the public. So I was, if you will, a consumer advocate for the people. Now I have to judge fairly. Although I campaigned on no rate increases,
Right.
the message of that was, yeah, if you can ever prove that you need it, yeah, I will do it. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you're ever going to do it because you get what you want anyway. And so, let's explore every single alternative, and solar and wind and hydro and all the options, and just, insulation and conservation, all the options. And let's do that. And then we'll see about rate increases. But right now, rate increases are off the table. So, elected first term, ran a re-election, elected second term. So, it's quite an experience.
Why do you think it is, as you've laid out, the Public Service Commission is an incredibly important, powerful body? Why do you think the utility companies, Southern Company, Georgia Power, were able to exert so much power over the commission when it is indeed elected, an elected body that, for all intents and purposes, is beholden to the people? But as you've said, you don't see it that way, or you didn't see it that way. How do you think it got those state of affairs started?
Well, it's simply money and power.
Okay.
If you got a big corporation that's got lobbyists everywhere, that has district managers all over the state, and it's not just the Public Service Commission. They have tremendous influence over the State House and Senate members. Nobody wants to make Georgia Power mad. They don't want to make them mad. Well, you'll regret it. The governor is beholden to them. They play an important role in economic development. They do a lot of advertising. They do a lot of lobbying. They spend a lot of money doing a lot of things. So they have a lot of influence. Public Service Commission, State House, State Senate, local office.
Are there any other, and obviously Georgia Power and Southern Company, that's a private company. There was a book written back in 1946, 1947 by Calvin Keitel and James Mackey called Who Runs Georgia? And essentially their holding was that it was Georgia Power, it was a handful of other corporations, Coca-Cola. Do you think that's still the case, that that power resides in those large-scale corporations here in Georgia?
Well, the fact of the matter is, it does. It does. You have enormously powerful companies, again, with unlimited monetary resources to win friends and influence people. And with enough money and with enough time, you can make friends with everybody that you need to make friends with, and you can exert a lot of power and influence. And hopefully, the corporations don't take advantage of that. I mean, hopefully they're like the Georgia Power is trying now to be more consumer focused. They weren't at all before, but they're trying to be more consumer focused now, advertising for conservation and solar and other things. So, they can be really good corporate citizens, or it can be really bad corporate citizens. That's up to the corporation and how they see their role.
So not long after you joined the board, you ran for chairman. What's the appeal or the allure of being the chairman of the PSC? What power do you have versus any other board member?
No, I didn't run for chairman.
Oh, you did not?
No.
Okay.
I was vice chairman for one term, but no.
Okay. I found an interesting quote, not from you, but from Margaret Shannon, who was she did a bio piece on you for the Atlanta Constitution. And she said that Lovett is worthy of criticism, but certainly not of calumny. His uneven performance and sometimes preposterous conduct marks him as a throwback to an honorable and valuable species in American politics, the gadfly, the maverick, the nonconformist. Without getting inside Ms. Shannon's head, what do you think? What were you up to? On the, we think of the Public Service Commission as this very staid, almost boring body. What were you doing that was so that marked you as a maverick or a nonconformist?
Public hearings all over the state, not authorized by the commission, but public hearings held by me. Statements that I would make, criticism of the commission. Things that the commission nobody on the commission ever did. So it was criticism after criticism after criticism, and that made me a maverick. Made me unconventional. And even though people would come to me, and I can't mention which people, but powerful people, and beg me not to be so critical, to calm it down, that that I want to be chairman. If I would calm down, and they'd help me be chairman. But no, I didn't want to be chairman. I wanted to do my job the way I felt like I needed to do it.
So you were on the board for about 2 or so years, and there's a gubernatorial election in 1982. George Busby's term limited, so it's going to be an open seat. You're a Democrat at this time. What made you jump or compelled you to jump into the Democratic primary for 1982?
I was frustrated because of the House and Senate and the governor, their inability or their unwillingness to seek reform, utility reform, and have a level playing field. So I felt like if I ran, I'd at least get the message out. I probably wouldn't win. I didn't have any thought that I really might win. You never know. But at least it gave me a platform and a message to go out to the people and say, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this job on the PSC by myself. It's going to take the governor and House and Senate members to help us reform this regulatory system that's broken.
When you were, when you were looking at the campaign, and you were talking about running on the issues of regulatory reform or regulation, were you the only candidate that was making that a centerpiece?
True.
Why don't you think any the front runners that year were Bo Ginn, Congressman
mm-hmm.
Ginn,
mm-hmm.
Joe Frank Harris, Norman Underwood?
Mm-hmm.
Why were they less willing to take that on as an issue, especially coming out of the late 70s with the energy crisis, which is something we can talk about too? Well,
again, there's very few people take on Georgia Power, so they talked about other issues, but they're not going to talk about that. That's my issue. They're going to go to other issues, and they're not going to get the power company upset with them.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about the energy crisis, the gas lines and energy costs, what was it like being on the Public Service Commission during the energy crisis of 78, 79?
It was quite a time, but it gave me an opportunity to reach out and put a coalition together of people that, since we were in a crisis, we don't have a state energy plan. Why wait for the federal government to come up with a federal energy plan? We don't have a state energy plan. So the push was, and we formed an organization to push a state energy plan that said, look, we need it. Look at this crisis we're in. We need a plan. And so gave us an opportunity to get more people involved. Southwire was a big supporter back in Carrollton, and some other companies too.
Did the Public Service Commission play a role in rationing or anything like that during that period?
No.
Okay. So you run your race for the Democratic primary, end up endorsing, I believe, Bo Ginn. over Joe Frank Harris. But Joe Frank is able to win. Why do you think a state representative from Cartersville, Georgia, was able to beat somebody like Bogan, like a very well-known congressman at the time, outspoken congressman at the time? Why do you think that was possible there in '82?
Tom Murphy.
Go ahead and elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, the way politics typically run in the state is back in that day, and some could argue even today, if you have a extremely powerful Speaker of the House, then the Speaker can call up every single House member and say, look, I've got this guy, I want this guy elected, and I want you to raise this much money, and I want you to hold an event for him, and I want you to do this, this, and this. And if you don't, then forget about it. Forget about committee assignments or whatever. So he's extremely powerful, and so that makes a big difference.
Did you pay much attention to the Republican side of the race?
No.
Was that just apart from being focused on your own campaign? It was just assumed that it was a foregone conclusion.
That was when Bob Bell?
Yep, Bob Bell.
Yeah, I like Bob, and I got along well with him, but I didn't think he was going to had a chance.
So in 1984, you ran for re-election, as you mentioned, successful, but you actually faced Republican competition in the general election. What was it like to actually have to run in November, or was it just sort of still a pro forma?
Yeah, pro forma. Yeah, it wasn't a concern.
So we've mentioned that Bob Bell, good guy, capable person. Mm-hmm. I don't know much about Jim McGraw, who ran against you in 1984, but it wasn't a concern of yours. Why then make the switch to the Georgia Republican Party?
Well, there comes a day in everyone's life, and it came in mine, when I realized that here I am trying to make change, but I can't make change within the Democrat Party because of the Speaker, because of the inability of and unwillingness of the State House and Senate and the governor to do anything. No state energy policy, no regulatory reform. So I'm unsuccessful in making change within the party, so go outside the party. So maybe I'm thinking, with Ronald Reagan and with other people, that this state needs a two-party system. Because if you leave people in there for too long, 20 years, everybody served for 20 years or more, and they don't progress to public servants. They're politicians. There's the big difference to me in a public servant and a politician. And too many people serving their own interest instead of the public's interest, and they don't have to worry about competition. Nobody's going to run against them in the Democrat primary, much less Republican. So I don't think that's healthy for the state. I didn't think it was healthy at all. So I made the big decision to change. I met with Paul Coverdale. He liked the idea. He encouraged me. And so we did it.
How did Democratic leaders respond?
They were glad to get rid of me. The editorialist and the AJC, they lambasted me. Good riddance. And so, but nobody cared, and I wasn't going to be a threat to them because, nobody believed the Republican Party was going to go anywhere. So, good riddance.
How were you received by Republican leaders or the rank and file?
It's great. Couldn't have been better. Bob Coverdale, Bob Shaw. I can't name everybody, but it
Sure.
just Matt Patton, who was chairman, and just so many people that welcomed me. They thought it was great. They were excited about it. So it couldn't have been any better.
What do you think that you brought the Republican Party? As an elected official, did you bring anything? Did you boost the party in any way? Either their, not necessarily reputation isn't the right word, but gravitas, their
Yeah, I would, and I think that's the way they saw it, because now the Republicans have an elected official. Not elected as a Republican, but they have an elected official. I have a voter base that's voted for me 2 times, 3 times. I have a voter base that's loyal to me, that hopefully I'm bringing over. They have someone that's an elected official that can go around the state and talk to smaller groups. You got to get back to the grassroots, and that's something the Republican Party didn't have, and my supporters were grassroots.
One thing I forgot to mention, talking about the tension with Democratic leaders when you switched, the Lovett Law.
Yeah, that too.
Were you really the origin of the law that you have to resign while you're?
That's true.
There's actually, at least in Athens, Clarke County, they always send out the wish list to the General Assembly, the delegation, to repeal the Lovett Law, because it complicates matters when you have open seats for a year and a half before an election. Yeah. So I thought that was the case, but I wanted to ask you about it.
Sure.
You were still on the Public Service Commission throughout most of the 1980s, through the 1980s. How did that affect you getting involved in sort of party politics, Republican Party politics?
Well, you have your weekends. The commission doesn't meet all the time every day. I couldn't do it when we're having hearings, but I could certainly. I rode in a lot of parades, and I went out and did a lot of campaign appearances for the party and for other candidates. So it didn't hurt my work on the commission, and I think it helped the party a lot.
Your first presidential election as a Republican was 1988. A very contentious primary election year here in Georgia, with supporters of George H.W. Bush and then other regular Republicans, either Bob Dole, Jack Kemp, and a tension with the new Christian right, or the sort of insurgent Christian right. Mm-hmm. Give me your assessment, your contemporary assessment of the conflicts within the Republican Party. Since as a newcomer to the party, what did you make of that intra-party competition?
Tried to stay out of it.
Smart approach.
And let the older, more seasoned Republicans handle it, and I really didn't get involved and didn't get engaged.
So after 1988, still on the commission, we get the 6-year terms. What made you decide to run statewide as insurance commissioner in 1990?
In consultation with party leadership, the first thing you have to do is you have to run candidates that have a chance to win. And I had a chance to win. I came pretty close. I lost, but came close. I have a regulatory background, so insurance regulation is extremely important. So I felt like I had a lot to offer, and I had, a statewide voter base where I could run for an office as a Republican and have a chance of winning. So it didn't work out, but that's fine. Then came the opportunity to be chairman of the party.
Your campaign in 1990, as you said, you came close. I think you probably had the narrowest margin of loss of any statewide Republican. Do you think that your experience, that you were a known quantity, you had name recognition, is that what accounted for the closeness of that race with Tim Riles, or was it something else?
No, I think that's what it was. People that knew me, I had been out again in every 159 counties. I knew people everywhere. And no matter what I wanted to run for, I think, within reason, I've got a core of supporters that believe in me. So,
I was looking back at some of Tim Riles's campaign literature, and he was running hard on cutting auto insurance rates. What was your platform? Was it mainly in running on experience, or did you have, like in 1978, a very specific proposal of we're not going to raise rates or something like that?
No, it was talking about auto insurance. I did as well.
Okay.
But I broadened it to health insurance. So
another topical subject.
I got off of auto and started focusing on health.
So you mentioned, basically going from the campaign trail to becoming state party chairman. A prize, I suppose, that some folks have sought, many people have sought. Why did you agree to take that post?
I was asked. I had the time and the opportunity, and in a historical standpoint, it was a turning point that I thought, well, I can bring a lot of political experience. I can bring hopefully a lot of these grassroots supporters, get them to be party activists. And so Atlanta Republicans, and I'm not talking about anybody individually, but in South Georgia, they're known as country club Republicans. Well, the party can't win with that image. So to some degree, I was able to go out in the hinterlands and get people involved that weren't involved before and say, hey, we have a party here, we need to make a change, and would you consider, helping me? I'm going to be chairman, and I need your help, and I need your support, I need your consideration. So I think that played a large role, and enjoyed my time as chairman.
So you succeeded Alec Pointevin,
correct,
from Bainbridge, so deep southwest Georgia. So it seems like that was a conscious decision on the part of the party to at least make the public face of the party,
right,
to make it a divergence from the sort of metro donut,
right,
that their old legacy as a suburban metropolitan party. So it was a very conscious decision on the part of either Mr. Pointevin or the state central committee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you come in to the party headquarters, 1991, what was your assessment of the sort of the critical infrastructure of the party? As somebody with political experience in both parties, how did you assess the state of the party that you were now leading?
Well, Alec did a great job, but I had to build my own team, and what's critical is raising funds. So my focus was on recruiting candidates and raising funds. We had not recruited many candidates because you can't recruit candidates because they don't think they can win. Nobody wants to run for the fun of it. But my race did show that you can come awfully close, and so my job was to recruit candidates to run, and I did, and I traveled all over the state recruiting candidates to run for every statewide office and local office as well. Help from Casey Cagle to Perry McGuire. I'm talking to the first time they ran.
Yeah,
I was there helping support them. Raise money. So we did fundraisers. We had people come in. We had T. Boone Pickens come in from Texas because business people wanted to meet this superstar, Mr. Pickens. And so we got the National Party and others to help us get people to come in to raise money. So that was my two jobs.
Other than just the power of persuasion, what tools were at your disposal to convince, these businessmen, these local officials, that running for public office as a Republican, that they could succeed? What did you have something that you could show them or offer them in terms of support or assistance?
Well, we had analysis, voting trends from my race and others, and going all the way back to Bo Calloway. The party, this party is growing, so we could prove it was growing, and we had a presidential candidate from Reagan to Bush. So there were a lot of business people and others that would support the national party, but they didn't support the state party. So again, we got together with business people who would give us time, and we'd go out to the community, and not just the business community, but go out to the community and hold fundraisers. And so that's how we did it.
You mentioned the business community being, at least at the national level, a reliable Republican constituency. Why had it proven resistant to openly supporting Republican candidates for office?
They can't. Tom Murphy, entrenched Democrats, so they can't afford to do it.
So even though ideology perhaps may align, practicality intercedes.
Correct.
Okay, so 1994 is your election cycle as your chairman. How early on did you know that, at least nationally, this was going to be a Republican year? How aware were you of the sort of coming Republican wave?
Yeah, could see it. Not everybody could see it, but a lot of us were very encouraged.
The Georgia Republicans elected three Republican congressmen in '94. Bob Barr, Saxby Chambliss, Charlie Norwood. In the previous year, '92, they had elected Jack Kingston, Matt Collins, and John Linder. So 6 Republican congressmen in 2 election cycles. Add to that the new Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.
Right.
What did that say about the Republican brand, the Republican Party in Georgia?
Well, it was at that point it was pretty clear. We were succeeding. We had great candidates, and proving that we could win, and these candidates would prove to be good office holders. So you build on your success. I mean, really, they were fantastic office holders. Jack Kingston and others, just tremendous people. But I knew all of them really well, and they were all good people, and they worked hard. And again, not just to be in D.C., just to say I'm a congressman, and hey, I'm a big deal, but more on the public servant side of it. That I think all of these guys were that way. So we felt really good that we were succeeding.
The one blemish to '94, Guy Milner's campaign against Zell Miller. I'd have to look at the votes, maybe 20,000 or so, 25,000 votes separating the two. Guy Milner got close, but he wasn't able to oust Zell Miller. Why not? What happened in that race?
Well, I recruited Guy Milner
to
run. Again, my job was to recruit candidates. So went to his office, sat down, and made the pitch. He thought about it and said, "I'll do it." Well, I was ecstatic because he was a fine man, fine Christian man, businessman, smart man, and he had funds to put in the race.
A not insignificant factor.
All of the above. So I don't think I could have recruited anybody any better. some people in the party weren't happy that I was recruiting a candidate for governor, but my job is not, I can't make everybody happy. My job is to get candidates that can win. There's other candidates that ran, but didn't think they had a chance of winning. Mm-hmm. The objective is to win and build the party. So we didn't raise enough money. I think if we'd have raised more money, we could have won. It was very close.
Oh, sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
What factors do you think that election turned on? Speaking of Milner and Miller.
Well, Zell has a brand, and he's not a bad guy at all. And eventually came over to the Republican Party, as we know. But Guy was unknown. Zell was known. Mm-hmm. You know what name ID does.
Sure.
It's a big percentage point. And so I don't think we raised enough money for Guy to get his name out.
You mentioned you sort of ran afoul of some folks in the party, thought you were maybe too involved. One of the quotes thrown out there was a kingmaker. How much did that play into your decision not to run for a second term as state party chair?
It's a tough job. I didn't want to run. It wasn't the criticism at all. But you do that for 2 years, and that's enough. It's enough. I honestly, I didn't want to run again. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back into business and not be involved in that much in politics.
Have you remained involved in any amount or any measure?
Just as a donor.
Just as a donor. An important part, as you say, but obviously very different. So let's zoom out a bit. Sort of we've talked about your firsthand experiences, but your assessment of the emergence of a two-party Georgia. Why were Georgia Democrats able to hold on for so long? 1868 to 2003, they held the governor's mansion in the legislature.
It's a good question. It goes back to power. If you're a Republican and you see this power block, and you're not going to run because you can't win, or you don't think you can win, it's too powerful, and that's what happens with monopolies. That's why you can have a good monopoly, you can have a bad monopoly. If they want to play hardball and they want to crush you, they can crush you. So it was one-sided for so long. They had a power block that very difficult to overcome. It took a long time to overcome it.
What were some of those factors that played into the Republican Party's emergence, its development, its going from a desperate minority party to the governing majority here in Georgia? What are some of those factors that you think are key?
Well, going back to what we talked about before, you have leadership. It's leadership issues. People in Atlanta urban areas that started to build the party and get all the credit for it, and then reaching out to people like me and others and saying, come be with us. We don't want to be a minority party. We don't want to do this. We want to give the Democrats a competitive choice, but the voters a choice, and between the Democrats and the Republicans. And we think we can run better candidates than what they're offering, and people that really want to be public servants and people make a difference. So it takes time and leadership and money to all of the above.
Why do you think, we were mentioning off camera that Republicans were gradually building a party, and then suddenly they have the governor's mansion, they have the Georgia Senate. The next election cycle, 2004, they take the Georgia House of Representatives. By 2011, every statewide elected officials are Republican. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest risk to the Republican Party's majority?
Complacency. Hey, we're the majority party, and it's always going to be that way. And it's not. It's not going to be that way. You look at demographics in the state to some degree, it's going to be more competitive. And so if the party is complacent, if the candidates are complacent, again, if Republicans can fall into the same trap that the Democrats fell into, and that's complacency. And we're going to be here forever, so let's don't worry. Let's don't work so hard because we don't need to. That's the biggest danger.
Why do you think Georgia Democrats haven't been able to mount much of an effective comeback here in Georgia?
Yeah, it's a good question. Candidates, I think to some degree their national, the DNC hurts them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the messaging is wrong for them. They could probably do better with more moderate candidates to take moderate steps, proposals. But anyway, that's the way I see it.
Looking down the road 10, 20 years, what do you think the Georgia Republican Party looks like, either in terms of its constituencies or its priorities?
Can't forecast that. Depends on leadership.
It's not a fair question, but it
depends on leadership. No, it's too far down the road.
Mm-hmm.
We have a changing electorate. We have a changing environment. We have many challenging issues, from education to artificial intelligence to all kinds of economic issues, social issues, and it's how either party tackles the issues and solves, comes up with solutions. It's like transportation. This transportation issue should have been dealt with a long time ago, 20, 30 years ago. Not now. I mean, we have to now, but it's 20, 30 years too late. So that's the kind of thing, if you get complacent and you don't worry about things like that. You got to look ahead. So
you've mentioned leadership of the party. Donald Trump, a historic election. Not many people predicted that he would even win the nomination, much less the general election. What role do you think Donald Trump is playing and will play on maybe the priorities of the Republican Party, the nature of the Republican Party? Already, economically at least, the Republican Party that I grew up knowing, free markets, globalization, capitalizing on globalization, whereas the current president is more inwardly looking, economic nationalism, some say economic populism. How can the Republican Party work with those sort of separate, divergent opinions or beliefs on how economics works?
I wish I had the answer to that.
We'd be very wealthy people if we could figure it.
I don't know.
Okay. Looking ahead, you foresee the Republican Party as the dominant party here in Georgia for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, foreseeable future meaning 4 years, 8 years.
As foreseeable as the future can be, I suppose.
Yeah. Again, it depends on leadership. If the Democrats get through their leadership and their candidates and they can raise money and the national party doesn't hurt them, then they're going to be very competitive. If we become complacent and we don't have good candidates and we don't do the right thing and we don't have a program that people buy into, then the party becomes vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the inflection point where those structural changes that you mentioned, demographics, the growing minority population, that the Democrats would be able to tap into that long term, and then maybe a more short term grievance with the Republican leadership. Well, I know you need to run.
Yeah, I do.
You do. Thank you very much for participating. The two-party Georgia series, sponsored by the Richard B. Russell Library at the University of Georgia. Really do appreciate it, Mr. Lovett.
Thank you. Appreciate it.